Bike sputtering on me.
That's not what you want on a cross-country trip.
Yeah, you're telling me. Looks like my journey ends here.
No, mate, you ride with Geico Motorcycle Insurance and got their 24/7 emergency roadside service. They'll fix your bike right up. Where you headed, anyways?
Oh, I'm going to Cromehenge. You ever been?
No, I can't say I have.
It's like Stonehenge, but shiny.
It feels good to ride with help. It feels good to Geico. Emergency roadside service is optional coverage.
Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast, where ordinary people inspire your extraordinary success. Hey, what's up, family? Our guest today is the founder of Kennedy Consulting Group. He spent 20 years helping C-level executives at some of America's largest companies transform their operations and rescue high-profile projects through his revolutionary Kennedy method, which emphasizes simplicity as the key to execution. Now, his approach has proven effective for everyone from military personnel to high performers in various fields, including those struggling with ADHD, autism, and even stroke recovery. John Kennedy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ian. It's great to be here.
John, I've been waiting to continue this conversation with you because I'm so excited about what you are able to talk about and to do with individuals, especially in the realm of what we talk about on this show, which is adversity and making comebacks from setbacks. And I want to hop in this conversation and I want to cue up your combat brain training program, which we'll get to. Yeah. But I want to kind of start with, can you share what inspired you in the first place to develop this training program?
Yeah, great question. So as you mentioned, my background was solving unsolvable problems, we used to call it, for big companies, making them more efficient, rescuing projects. Then I got my biggest challenge back in 2006. So my brother, who was in the Army, returned from Iraq and said the biggest threat that our men and women face over there are IEDs, the improvised explosive devices that were just so insidious. Full on battle, we beat anybody, but you have a bomb sitting in a pile of garbage and a trigger man a mile away. It's just really, really tough. Right. And so I did a lot of research in how I could possibly help. And basically what we realized, talking to a Marine general at an event the Marines held every year at 29 Palms, was intuition was the key, right? So if you can intuit danger, then you have a chance of surviving, making the right decision under that stressful second or split second. And so, being a process guy, hanging out with Marines, I can't teach them anything about process. They are so process driven, right?
Yeah.
But that's when I had one of these God winks, and it was kind of like this vision. What if you could do the same thing for the brain that you do for operations? If you can make the brain more efficient, then maybe you can improve intuition and maybe create a lot of other great things. So to me, it was a no-brainer, right? Help businesses make more money or help people stay alive in combat. So that's what inspired me to develop the program. And, the background of that was an experiment that I had to do for the Department of Defense with the Marines. And no one had ever, in fact, no one believed it would work. Psychologists didn't believe it. Nobody believed it. Mm-hmm. But General Stone helped me get this opportunity. And basically, it was a full experiment. We had a control platoon of 40 guys, randomly chosen. And then the experiment platoon I got to work with were guys who were really struggling. We talk about adversity and trauma. Well, they'd lost 16 guys a cycle before from a helicopter crash and IED casualties. So they were really struggling. A lot of post-traumatic stress, a lot of depression. They weren't really performing where they needed to. In fact, they even had 3 attempted suicides. The guys were just really struggling. Mm-hmm. So I embedded with them for 3 months while I developed my program. Again, it was a theory, right? Would it work? And they helped me get through this. I actually developed some very simple exercises that I realized if we give the brain something simple to do and make it work hard, it will change physically. And research out of MIT came at just the right amount of time to show that it was actually possible to do this. And so 3 months later, they were not just the best performing platoon in that battalion now, but one of the best ever to go through final plate deployment training. And then my reputation had spread. So I was fortunate to work with Navy SEALs, snipers, pilots, EOD, a lot of different units that would bring me in to help their guys not just perform better, but also become more resilient, right? Be able to overcome a lot of what was holding them back.
That all sounds amazing. And I want to kind of jump in on a word that you use. You were talking about psychologists didn't think it was going to work. So I want to ask, how does your program differ from traditional psychological methods of building resilience?
It's a great question because we kind of, so basically I created the field of applied neuroplasticity to make this happen. In other words, applying these process approaches to the brain using neuroplasticity. Now, neuroplasticity is the incredible capability God's given our brain to change from repetition. Whatever we do, think, or anyway repeat, that starts to form those ruts. And from our model, actually, because my background was a lot of computers, I kind of created, I call it the computer model. Now, a computer has applications, the things you do with your computer, games, business software, browser. It has an operating system, which is critical, right? The operating systems which everything filters through. And then you have the processor. And where I liken this to is psychology really operates at the operating system level, right? How we think. So psychology is really important, right? Because, I mean, it's what we filter through. So you go see a sports psychologist or a mental health, professional. They're going to help you refilter your information in a better way. But again, because of neuroplasticity, it takes a while. You just don't see a therapist once and you're fixed, right? I mean, it takes a long time to repeat that.
Right.
And the applications basically are the things we do. You could be an athlete and throw a ball 10,000 times. That's also neuroplasticity. We call it muscle memory, but it's really the brain that's remembering. And then where I operate is at the actual CPU level. So my program makes the brain faster and more efficient and helps them get into flow state very quickly. You experience just a little bit of it, right? And your processing speed improved by, I think, 10 to 15% in just a little bit. And that's kind of what we do. And so I don't compete with psychology. I actually can help them get better results. But it's not psychology. A lot of people say, oh, is it NLP? Is it this? No, those are all powerful programs, but that's the operating system. I want to just specifically work at the CPU and make it change really, really fast.
And guys, I did have the opportunity to go through one of John's tools that he uses, and it was no more than 5-10 minutes, and I saw results immediately. I was able to process information faster, and it was incredible. Without even understanding how it worked, it worked for me. So amazing. And just to clarify, just for people who may not know, because I know neuroplasticity, kind of a buzzword lately. We've got a lot of people talking about, neuroscience. In your estimation, if you could you clearly specify what neuroplasticity is for you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, when I had this mandate from General Stone, I was like, okay, I better learn about this stuff as quickly as I can. And the best book I recommend to everyone, it's almost 20 years old now, but it was really the seminal book. And it's Norman Doidge's book, The Brain That Changes Itself. And he goes very long because up until that time, especially with the psychology approach, the belief was that the brain was kind of hardwired and fixed and you really couldn't change it. Yeah. What was happening then is brain scans were coming out. They're seeing physical changes. And so that's when it got around to neuroplasticity. So I like to summarize neuroplasticity as whatever you do, say, or think and repeat it, those are the ruts you're going to form. And that's really what neuroplasticity is. I mean, and there's different ways to, it's nothing we can, some people say they can control it. I mean, there's certain things we can do to maybe speed up that, which is great and change it. But it's kind of the thing that's always there. It's why we have habits. It's why, it's important for parents to raise up their kids the right way, right? Because whatever they repeat, those are the ruts that are going to control our lives for the rest of our lives, unless we consciously do something to change it, to fix it.
And when you say ruts, we're talking about synapses in the brain firing and wiring.
Exactly.
Together.
Yeah, exactly. Neurons that fire together, wire together, and repeat it. And it's incredible if you ever get a chance to see some of the visuals I have now of neurons actually under stimulation, looking for each other and reconnecting. And then there's postsynaptic receptors that hold the data from the other neuron. And so our training actually increases that ability. So that's how we get such fast results. It's actually a very specific type of stimulation that, again, perfect timing. I read about this in a book called How God Changes Your Brain, about this experiment at MIT. And they found that a very specific type of stimulation changes the brain, not just over days, weeks, and months, but immediately. And that's what my program is based on. That's why we get such results so fast. So we're basically pushing the brain to do something. And as you remember, the exercise, the goal is to give the brain something it thinks is simple. So you don't need to know neuroscience, you don't need to know psychology or anything. You just do the exercises, right? It's like going to the gym and lifting a weight.
Right.
But when you do that, the brain will work as hard as it needs to do what we ask it to do. And it will rewire around damage. It will strengthen, connections that are already strong, and will make them even faster.
Mm-hmm. You've said this a couple of times, through repetition.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine has told me, I've always remember this quote he says, is that repetition is the mother of skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more
exactly.
you do it, the better you get at it. So it's just incredible
Right.
that you found a way to take a process, make the brain repeat it, and then be more efficient at it, like immediately. It's amazing.
Right. Well, but I always like the caveat that my daughter's soccer coach used to tell her. He said, it's not practice that makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. So you're right, repetition, but we have to be careful what we're repeating, because neuroplasticity is completely agnostic. You can repeat, you can create bad habits or good habits, right? So just to be aware of that whatever we repeat is going to be harder to change.
Right. And I think that in itself is a pearl of wisdom when we're talking about self-belief, when we're talking about abolishing limited self-belief for ourselves, is if we have that on repeat, those negative thought patterns, that's what we're going to get.
Right.
And that's so important.
Exactly.
Now I want to talk about, John, like your methods have been used with various groups, as you mentioned, including athletes and people dealing with post-traumatic stress. And you mentioned this a little bit before when we talked, and I know you have a couple of different examples that you can use, but it's kind of a double question here. How have you tailored your approach for different audiences? And out of those, which has been, maybe you have more than one, your favorite success story that stands out to you?
That's a great question, because we're improving all parts of the brain. And typically, so I work at both ends of the spectrum, as you mentioned, high performers, Navy SEAL, professional athletes, entrepreneurs, and also people who are really struggling. Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to that efficiency of our brain processing. So one of my favorite stories was a Navy SEAL, actually, a EOD specialist I worked with in San Diego many years ago. And, afterwards, and the whole class did extremely better. Right after our class, they went to a marksmanship package, and they scored higher than anyone else had ever scored there before. So performance was, but what really meant a lot to me was he came up to me afterwards and he said, I've deployed 5 times. I know I have post-traumatic stress. I'm so angry, I can't control it with my family, with my team. I'm destroying them, but I don't want to leave my guys who don't get there. He said, now this is after a week of training with this unit. He said, it's all gone. I mean, we are more cohesive than ever. My anger is gone. I get along better with my family. So that was something that meant a lot to me, because it wasn't just, he's shooting better and he's doing his work better, but also emotionally. And then on the other end of the spectrum, just really incredible how we can change lives. So one of my favorite stories is a young boy. He's 10 years old, very severe ADHD, failing in school. His parents did not want to put him on medication. So I started working with him. And he was one of the slowest processing people I'd ever started with, just because he couldn't focus. After 3 sessions, his processing speed had come down like 2/3. He got his first day ever in school. And then about 6 weeks later, he got Student of the Month award. But again, more meaningful was, I was talking to his grandmother, who I was helping with her dementia. She said she was at his birthday party, and he went, found a book, sat down and read to her. Never could happen before. So their whole lives are better, right? Just by him doing this program. Similar stories with autistics. Very quickly, I mean, it amazes to me the changes we can make in people's lives just by improving their brain processing.
Yeah, it is incredible to think how many different ways that this can touch people. And change their lives with your program.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
you mentioned that our brains are incredibly adaptable. What, I guess, practical steps could an individual take on a daily basis to start to
Yeah.
enhance their brain's ability, I guess, to rewire and adapt, especially when they're, and this is probably the hardest part, when they're in a challenging situation, like when
Yeah.
they're in it. Is there a practical step that they can do to, I don't know, maybe step away from the fray for a minute to be able to enhance their ability to deal with that situation?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways, and mostly in the psychology realm. The easiest thing is just run through my exercises, right? Because that makes such a huge difference. But
Right.
even being aware. So, a lot of times we get caught up. We're doing something that just because of our habits or neuroplasticity, we're not going the direction we want to. Just pausing and being aware of that, right? So then at least you have an opportunity to change. Habits, that's what habits are, neuroplasticity. And we've actually developed a way to help almost anyone change any habit in their life in 30 minutes instead of 30 days, because normally it takes 30 days. That's being aware, that's creating a new process that you want and just repeating it over and over and over again. The cool thing about it is it gives you now control. One of the things we work with people with addictions, we work with people with a lot of different issues. And one of the most depressing things is they feel like they have no control. But they can get control, right? If you be using the applied neuroplasticity approach, they can get control of their life, improve their confidence, and then overcome what's holding them back. But it always starts with awareness, right? When I speak, I always like to give people hope. There is hope to change. You never want to be hopeless. You never want to get into that depression, because what you're doing is, if you start to feel hopeless and depressed, what you're repeating is the negative, right? Instead of the
Yeah.
positive. So we want to
Right.
make the positive, embrace it, and then continue to reinforce it. And that's really how we can change lives.
Yeah, that's so paramount to what we talk about. And it is just amazing that you have a program now that can help people do that. Like you said, like
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
hope, like there is a way to change. There's a way to change your mindset literally
Yes.
by
Yeah.
going through these exercises. Yeah, I love that. Now, you talked about at the beginning of our conversation about anticipation
Yes.
and being
Right.
able
Right.
to, that being a key component of resilience.
Yes. Right. Right.
How would someone, I guess, create that or cultivate that anticipation into their life so they can better navigate obstacles and be able to stay focused on their goals? Because a lot of us sometimes have been just knocked off course because something out of
Right.
left field has hit us and now our attention is somewhere else. And instead of us going towards what we want, we are now focused on this other thing. And then we get stuck. We get stuck in that other kind of rut, which is a bad rut where we are now limited to, again, our self-belief. We have these negative thoughts. We have these negative thought patterns, these loops that then we all of a sudden find ourselves, quote unquote, stuck. But like
Right.
life has done me dirty. I am stuck in this position. But talking about anticipation, like anticipating rough patches, anticipating challenges, anticipating adversity. I think that's
Right.
so important to talk about. Like how can someone, I guess, cultivate that anticipation so when adversity does come, we're ready for it?
I don't want to keep talking about my program, right? But that's exactly what it's designed for, right?
Mhm.
So one of the primary exercises you do a little bit of it is that anticipation. And your brain unconsciously anticipates. It
Mhm.
just flows over anything that's holding it back. Now, in the real, without that, just even being, again, awareness is huge. So one of the things I encourage people to do, and again, it takes a while in practice. It's not immediate like my program, but even if they're watching a movie, right? From the very beginning, they should try to figure out the plot, figure out what's going to happen, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, whatever, and figure out.
Mhm.
And as you go along, you kind of monitor that. And then, you're going to get really good at anticipating how that flow of information is going to come, because that's what you're practicing. I mean, instead of just watching a movie and say, "Oh, that's dumb." There's movies I did that's a plot hole, whatever. But if you can, instead of that, kind of anticipate the same thing in conversations. Most people they have a conversation, they start talking without thinking. That's normal, right? That's how we get fun. But if you can pause for a second, just hold yourself back. How do I want this conversation to go? What are the key things I want to get out of it? Or a meeting? What are the key things I want out of this meeting? And then when those are the milestones you want to hit, as the conversation flows, you have an opportunity to kind of anticipate and direct it towards the goals that you want instead of just randomly, talking. So a lot of this is awareness, which takes work, right? You have to remind yourself, okay, what's going to happen? What do I want to happen? How can I make that happen? And kind of think through and then monitor as you get to the point that you anticipate.
It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner. Backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF. As you're talking, John, I can't help to think about dreams in terms of goals, like what people want to achieve. Like we set these big, hairy, audacious goals and we're all excited about how we're going to get there. And all in our minds, everything is going right because we envision ourselves at the end, right?
Right.
But we never stop to think about what could go wrong, and not in the way to make us not want to go after it, but in the way of, I need to be thinking about what's going to happen potentially that could derail me, but I'll be ready for it because I've already thought about that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That preparation is so important. You're exactly right. So you have a great dream, but there's always going to be setbacks, right? Things are going to happen. If you can anticipate them and have the options already set. This goes back to my project management days, that this based on my program is project management for the brain. So as you lay out that plan, you want to, as you said, try to anticipate what could go wrong. If it goes wrong, what are your contingencies, right? Think through those contingencies. And one of the things we found too is, for a big project, you want to write all that down. But even on something like, I don't know, packing the car for the weekend or something, whatever, the more you can plan it out first, the basic thinking process is break it down, think it through, and execute. So if you have a goal, again, it could be packing a car for vacation, or it could be doing your work day, your morning routine. Break it down into different components. Try to think through, again, if it's larger, you can write this down, but even mentally think through all the steps that have to come together that you've broken down so that your mind is ready to execute. What you don't want to do is come up to the second of execution and have to figure out what you're going to do. You'll also find the better you get at that is as you're thinking through that process, anytime something feels uncomfortable, it's probably because you're just missing out information, right? So the trip, use that example of trip to the car. So you're thinking this all through, whatever, you're thinking you get in the car, something doesn't feel right, you go back and go, oh, wait a minute, I got to get gas. Right. So wherever you feel a little bit of tension, you just means you're not that anything's wrong, but you're missing information. If you can fill that information into your process. So, okay, load the car, get gas, and then hit the road. Then once it's in your head, you just follow it. Execution becomes so much easier.
Right. I'm thinking for myself, as I have goals that I want to get to and I hit walls, and as you mentioned, there's nothing wrong. There's just a lack of information.
Yes.
Lack of knowledge, lacking knowing what to do in this situation.
Right.
So then getting that knowledge, putting it into play, then you're able to continue to move forward.
Yes, exactly. Right? Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Now, I know that a lot of us that are dealing with setbacks and adversity, we have to deal with our emotions, right? Because we feel a certain way about it. And many of us face emotional triggers that can derail our progress. does your program help individuals overcome these triggers and start to build a more resilient mindset?
Yeah, we've had great success. I mean, for almost 20 years now, that's with post-traumatic stress, inner city kids in Chicago with a lot of ACE stress. And that's where the anticipation comes in.
Mm.
So what we found is, we can't heal the trauma, but we can remove the triggers. Because when your brain is anticipating something, it's getting into flow state, it's processing smoothly, the triggers don't bother you anymore. It's like that exercise you did. Remember we added the double tap? And so when you add different things to it, those are the distractions that pull you away from your goal, from your focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can train the brain for that. And it's amazing. I mean, the stories, one vet, again, young Marine deployed several times. He says, before in your training, I would freak out. My wife would put ketchup on her burger and all I could see was the blood and I'd freak out. He said, that's all gone, because she's trained his brain now with the anticipation to just always look ahead and not get triggered by the little things that used to trigger him. So a lot of success with people dealing with trauma. Absolutely.
And that is amazing. What you said, like you can't heal the trauma, but you can deal with the triggers that would make you relive that trauma, essentially.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting. Now, when we had talked before, you had mentioned like dopamine and endorphins, how they are, I guess, elicited during your training. Can you explain, like, I know, again, those are kind of some buzzwords, dopamine, endorphins, serotonin.
Oxytocin.
Yes, oxytocin. Can you explain how those neurotransmitters play, or the role they play in like motivation and in resilience, and how we can actually harness them effectively?
So I've had many, many neuroscientists help me with the program, just because, I developed it. I'm a consultant about work and I want to know why it's working. So they've given such powerful, but what you're kind of doing is, typically dopamine, you're anticipating something that's going to happen, but in the training, it's compressed, right? So every time we do, like even with you, we only did a little bit, but every time there's something harder coming, your brain's not quite sure it can do it. Right. So there's an anticipation. That's what releases the dopamine. And that's why people laugh when they do it, because of the dopamine is making them feel better. They're anticipating, can they do it? And then when they do it, actually, because again, no matter how hard it is, by the time you get to the bottom of the exercise, you're actually doing it pretty well. You get the endorphin in a group setting. There's oxytocin. There's a lot of powerful research around when you do these exercises together with a team or a family, you sync up unconsciously. And that's another powerful. So all those neurotransmitters are released, and that's what really helps change your brain really fast. And that's why people laugh. They have a lot of fun, and all of a sudden, wow, I didn't know I could do that, right? And now you can do it. So yeah, that's a very powerful part of it.
Speaking, I mean, we're talking a lot about the brain, of course. And I know that we talked about your methods involving different and engaging different parts of the brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, why is it important to incorporate both hemispheres and all the lobes and all that for optimal processing?
That's a great question too, because there's a lot of programs that Lumosity, Cognitive, they're on a screen. Right? So if you're doing brain training on a screen, all you're doing is stimulating your eyes, basically, maybe your fingers. And so while they always claim that you do better at the games, that's practice effect. Neuroscientists show research very minimal real world benefits because you're not connecting to the real world. So what we want to do is we want your brain to connect to the real world and make those connections stronger. So that's why we start with eyes, ears, and mouth, getting those parts, but then we add hands right away for two reasons. One, we want the longer connection from the brain to the hand to be faster for keyboarding or if you're an athlete. But as you mentioned, now we're using both hemispheres of the brain. There's a left side of the brain controls the right side of the body and vice versa. So now we're bringing complete balance to the brain, and we get legs involved. We add more and more parts of the peripheral nervous system while we're training the brain. So two things. One, it makes the brain work a lot harder because it's got more to do, and also makes those connections to the real world stronger and faster. And the goal of including as many parts of your brain as possible is because what we're doing is we're reinforcing the basic foundational processing skills or cognitive skills that we rely on to do everything. And from our research, those typically are developed up until the age of 6 or 7, primarily from interaction with the environment and modeling from adults, which is why whenever we speak to parents, get your kids off the phones. They're not a good babysitter. They're turning your brains to mush. I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. You want engaged in real world connections. But we all have a different makeup of those. And typically over time, our stronger processing compensates for the weaker ones. That's why typically you can be going along fine. All of a sudden, something stressful happens, you get frustrated. Why is that? It's because your better processing skills are getting overloaded because they have to compensate for your weaker ones. But when we flood the entire brain with stimulation, wherever it's weaker, this is amazing way God made our brain change fast. Wherever those connections are weaker, they will change the fastest. So typically after just 3 sessions, it's always amazing to me, no matter where someone starts, whether they're fast or slow, or they're struggling with patterns, or whatever, usually by the 3rd session or so, they're pretty much equal in terms of their ability to process the information because all those weaker processes are now much stronger. And now the strong ones are also stronger. So we get universal improvement. And I don't do assessments. I don't try to fix anything, right? I just let the brain do what it needs to do what we ask it to do, which is just to make these very simple decisions. So that's why we want to include as many parts of the peripheral vision along with the executive function training at the same time.
So you are literally training the brain.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Train all parts of the brain too. So the stories, I just told you too, I got thousands of stories. There's amazing things that happen to people's lives because of that.
I can't help to think that like what we're talking about and what you're able to do with clients is just the underpinning for self-belief. For anyone who has issues with limiting beliefs, who deal with adversity, who have a hard time getting themselves to understand that they are more powerful than they realize. And through your program, you're able to prove it to them that they really do have everything that they need in them already.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. That's why it supports psychology so much, right? So you can do your self-belief. I'm great at this, or I'm good at this. And over time, they'll get better. And that's as you're saying, that's a way to heal. But at the same time, if they're actually experiencing that improvement through the brain training, it complements so well because it's not just believing they could do something, they're actually doing it. And so that's why very quickly, within just minutes, they're starting to do things they couldn't have done before. And I have this great success with, people with depression and anxiety, and they tried to think themselves out of it. But when they actually train their brain out of it, it reinforced what they were trying to think through.
Yeah. Have you, and it's curious, have you had any, unexpected improvements clients have had experiencing in their everyday lives as a result of your program?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So I started working with a financial analyst, very overwhelmed at work. Just got a promotion. I met with him on a Friday, and we're going to continue working, right? Because obviously he needed some help at work. And I always train my clients something I call a quick neural primer. It's just like a 1-minute exercise you can do to rewire your brain faster. So Monday morning, I got an email from him, totally unexpected. He goes, "You're not going to believe what happened. I ran through your neural primer Saturday morning. I got more done around the house by noon than normally would all weekend. And my wife now says, when she talks to me, I'm focused on her. You already made my home life great. I can't wait to get to work." So I didn't expect that at all, right? But just more manifestations of a faster and more efficient brain.
That is, again, that just makes me think there are so many different applications for this that can touch so many areas of people's lives.
Yeah.
Professional, personal, physically, being able to. And have you had any experiences with individuals coming back from physical setbacks that this has helped?
Yes, several of those. One young man, college student, suffered cerebral palsy, could not use his hands effectively. After, again, a magical 3rd session, he said, "You're not going to believe this. For the first time in my life, I can open a bag of crackers without using my teeth in a bottle with a bottle opener." But then he's kind of funny. He goes, "Pretty useful skills for a college kid."
Yeah.
Right. A young woman who fell out of a tree was in a coma for 4 months with a severe concussion, could barely speak or use her hands or legs. And then after 3-4 years, just last year, I got to watch her walk down the aisle to get married. So complete just improvements in her life that never could have happened before. One of my clients is an orthopedic surgeon, and we've had fun together. But he loves the program because he can do a 6-hour operation now in just 2 hours. So twice as many patients in a home with his family, but we integrated some of the exercises into some of his therapy. A lot of times, if someone's coming back from an injury, like elbow replacement or something, for example, we're very scared about injury it again. So if they do the exercises, which is taking their focus, and at the same time they're doing their required movements, they don't think about injuries anymore because they're focused on what they're doing and they heal faster. So lots of applications for physical as well as mental. I mean, because everything goes through our brain, right? Everything goes through our brain.
Yeah. It's just as amazing to me that you help somebody with cerebral palsy to be able to move their body and articulate their hands and fingers in ways they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, that's because we're engaging that peripheral nervous system and re-energizing connections that might have been damaged or that weren't before. But again, because he's focusing on the executive function pieces, it's happening without thinking about it. It just happens. So
again, it is. I'm thinking of all of these things. Like, this is just amazing. And so okay, if you were to take the methodologies of your brain training and conventional mindset coaching principles, would you say that? I guess, how would you say they differ? But then at the same time, how would you say they can actually work together? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, they work together very well. I've actually I certify other practitioners now. I've certified DiMartini coaches, mindset coaches, NLP coaches. And it's a great, that kind of goes to the operating system and the processor. So mindset coaches, it's really important, right? I mean, our mindset impacts everything. And so when you work with a mindset coach, it takes time, but you're changing your mindset. You have to remember, so you're basically thinking it. Whereas what my program does is it changes the brain to be where it needs to be so much faster. So you can improve your mindset to be positive. At the same time, if your brain is actually accomplishing more than you thought it could, that makes you more positive. It helps your confidence because every time you do an exercise that you didn't think you can do, now you can do it. That spills over to the real world. So they're very complementary. In fact, I like working with others in that area because I think together they're even more powerful.
Yeah. Like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for our listeners and viewers who may be struggling with resilience and some mindset issues, what is one piece of advice that you would recommend for them to start to change their journey, start to change their trajectory in life?
Well, I think, again, just the awareness of neuroplasticity. So if they're working on mindset changes, embrace it, right? Realize you got to practice, you got to do it, and it will physically change your brain. Positive thoughts, obviously. Whatever you repeat, actually, that's what those ruts are going to find. And I think if they can just embrace that understanding that whatever they repeat is going to become easier, then that can change their life, right? It can be a lot more positive than getting stuck and discouraged.
Would you say that the linchpin to repeating those positive, we'll call them affirmations, positive thoughts, is the actual belief that they will happen?
Yes, again, that's where we complement each other, right? Because it's the belief, right? So you start the exercise, I don't believe I can do this, right? And then it becomes easy. So that improves your belief. And at the same time, if you're doing your mindset, exactly, you have to believe, Napoleon Hill, whatever the mind can conceive and it can achieve, right? So, but you got to believe it, conceive and believe, right? You have to believe it. And that also helps set your mindset to be more positive. And you can start making that happen.
Absolutely. Man, John, I could talk to you about this for hours, but I want to give our listeners and viewers an opportunity to find out where they can get more information about your program, get in contact with you, what's the best way or best place for them to do that?
The best place, and we're in the process of rebuilding it right now, but combatbraintraining.com is the anchor website right now for the program.
Okay.
And again, it's don't forget the brain. It's not teaching people how to fight. It's teaching our brains how to succeed in combat. And everything we're doing in combat, whether you're a parent, we have to be able to protect ourselves, improve our performance. So combatbraintrain.com, or they can just email me, john@combatbraintrain.com, and I'll just respond to them. Send them any information that they want. One of the things we're doing, because we help such a wide range of people, a lot of times people reach out to me, can you help with this or can you help with that? And then I can send them some customized information with the results relevant to what they're trying to improve.
Guys, reach out to John. I mean, his program is amazing. Just from the little bit that I experienced, again, it is tangible results so quick. And to think, and you've heard it here in this conversation, how many different types of people in different areas of life that this can improve. So make sure that you reach out to John at combattraining.com.
Well, you forgot the brain, combatbraintraining.
It's okay. Yeah, don't forget the brain. And you said, don't forget the brain. combatbraintraining.com. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for doing the same. And we'll wrap this up like we always do. Remember to stay positive, stay persistent, and know that mindset is everything. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment or two. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.